Hey, welcome back to the show. Dr. Zach is back, and as promised, he's going to help you live healthier and longer. Only if you listen to his advice, because you know you're not a magician.
I am
right?
not a magician. Nope.
You're not a wizard. You can't. You have to actually work on these things.
Yeah,
but you've come up with 7 ways. Let's first of all talk about living healthier, living longer. The good news is we are. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we really are. We're living longer.
Expectancy.
Everyone
Amazing.
always looks at, what's happening in the world and go, oh, it's a terrible time to be alive. It's a great time to be alive, isn't it?
You know what? That's a great way to look at it, absolutely. Because positivity, I was talking with Susan earlier. She's such a positive person, and it permeates, and it's contagious. So, yes. We are living longer and we're living healthier, absolutely.
And it starts with a positive attitude. So you narrowed it down to 7 magnificent ways to live longer and healthier. How did you narrow it down to 7?
Well, I just looked at the ones that actually have good evidence.
Okay.
And all these, you'll see, you can look on the blog post, but each of them, there are studies that I cite, and each of them will extend your life by years. Some of them up to 10 years, at least 5 years if you do all these things. And the contrast is, I do get asked a lot from magazines and stuff, tell us the top 5 secrets to living longer and potency and, just being super healthy. But what they want is these, eat quinoa or goji berries. And unfortunately, this is the problem. And my daughter's like, oh, Dad, it's so boring. It's always the same. That's the problem. Is like,
I know, it's redundant.
We know these things, right?
For sure.
We know these things.
But
However,
it's a good reminder. Yeah, right? Because we forget them.
Yeah, and the truth is, if we all do these things, and none of us do all these things 100% of the time, but if we do them, we will live longer and healthier.
Well, let's look at it. Let's look at all. I mean, an obvious one is don't smoke, and I think that's
a 10-year one, right?
and come a long way, right? As far as smoking goes.
Absolutely.
Education has worked.
Smoking rates have decreased. It's very hard, and that's the thing. If you're a smoker, you've probably tried already a couple of times, but that's if you're a long-term smoker, your life expectancy is about 10 years longer. Sorry. So if you quit, that is, you've just added years to your life. So it's obvious. We all know it, but you got to find a way to do it.
I know how hard it is. I smoked for 22 years. It's very difficult. I quit cold turkey.
But you can get it back. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You gain those life years back.
It's true. Eat well, right? And part of eating well and controlling your glucose.
Yep. So
I talked to you in the break. Not a lot of people think about that.
No, and that's not, so I say for diabetics for sure, and they know more about it, but for us too. And what does that mean? So we know added sugar is a killer, unfortunately, but also making choices, so eat brown, right? So eat brown bread, eat brown rice, eat brown pasta, because as we were talking about earlier, even if you're not diabetic, your glucose will spike, and that's harmful. That's harmful to the tissues in your body. So there's the sugar, and there's also fats. Eat more of the good fats that you get from fish or you get from almonds, and olive oil, that sort of thing, and less of the less good fats, the saturated fats, and certainly not the trans fats, So keep off the donuts as much as possible, and then animal, beef and whatnot. Try and limit it to 1 or 2 times a week, that sort of thing.
And we're seeing that with the new Canada Food Guide, right? They've really made a major change. Controlling your weight is another big one. Many of us think about it, right?
That's another 10-year one, by the way. If you're morbidly obese, your life expectancy is about 10 years less. So, and that goes with the other things that I talk about. So we talked about diet. One of the other important ones I want to make sure we get to is being active.
Yes,
right? Physical activity, there's great, and not just physical, by the way, but physical activity for sure. There's good evidence of a few years, up to 5 years, increase in your life expectancy from being physically active, but social activity too, and mental.
I wanted to talk about, creating a social network. That is
very important.
And we're not talking online here.
No.
The human to
You're right. You're right.
The human to human interaction is very important when it comes to your social network.
So again, people actually do live longer. They have a 50%. People who are isolated do have a 50% increased risk of premature death.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we see that when we had the heat storm, when it was super hot last summer, and also when when it's super cold. People who are alone so they're not really talking about that, but isolation is definitely a risk factor for illness and premature death.
Well, I mentioned, I think it was yesterday, the Red Cross has called isolation and loneliness an epidemic. Like, that's how serious it is. They said 10% of the population is living in isolation.
So reach out.
That's sad.
And we can do, I talk about physical activity, but we can try and do these things as a group. So it's hard. It's hard to be physically active all the time. It's hard to lose weight. But if you can do things as a group, and if you can find ways to make it enjoyable, so have a walking group, have a running group, or find a sport that you enjoy doing together. That's the way to make these things palatable and sustainable, because it's very hard to eat well all the time and exercise all the time. But if you enjoy it, if you find ways to make it part of your lifestyle, I think you walk to work. I try and bike or walk to work whenever I can. Make it part of your lifestyle. Do it with friends. It's motivating.
And, you know, you mentioned eating well. You know, prepare meals with your family and have some fun. Like, I even sometimes, I turn it into a TV show. Pretend we're on a TV show, right? And then it just makes it an entertaining thing. And it doesn't seem like, oh, God, got to make food again. You know, you spend your time wisely. Always a pleasure having you. I want to remind everybody at home, of course, you can go to our blog section. For Kathleen Trotter, by the way, for her personal training information, and also for Dr. Zach, if you want more information on these magnificent ways to stay healthy and live longer. We'll be back with more right after this.